The human hung suspended in the containment field, blood dried on his temple, eyes half closed but still defiant. Vel'kara circled him slowly, her forearms clasped behind her carapace, and what she hoped looked like patience. It had been 3 cycles since they'd pulled him from the wreckage of his scout ship, and he hadn't spoken a single word. "Your vessel was in restricted Korvathi space," she said, her translator rendering her clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless human speech. "You were armed. You were alone. Tell me why." The human's eyes tracked her movement, but his mouth remained sealed. Vel'kara felt her secondary lungs inflate with frustration. She'd interrogated hundreds of species across her career with the Korvathi Intelligence Division. Everyone talked eventually. Everyone. But this human was different. She'd studied the reports on Earth. That distant blue world in an unremarkable spiral arm. A young species barely 3 centuries into space travel. Fractious, divided, emotional, easy prey, according to the War Council. The Korvathi Dominion had already begun mobilizing their fleet for annexation. One more resource-rich system to fuel the Empire's expansion. Yet something about this prisoner unsettled her. Vel'kara moved closer, her optical sensors adjusting to examine him more carefully. That's when she noticed the scars. They covered him. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Long white lines across his arms, puckered circular marks on his chest, a vicious slash across his ribs that looked like it should have killed him. Some were clearly old, faded to silver against his skin. Others appeared more recent, still pink and raised. "Your medical technology is primitive," she observed. "Why didn't you repair this damage?" For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not pain, something closer to pride. Vel'kara pulled up her datapad, activating the medical scanner. She'd document every injury, build a psychological profile. Scars told stories. She began with his left shoulder, a burn pattern inconsistent with any weapon she recognized. The scanner's AI attempted to match it against the galactic database. The result made her mandibles click in confusion. The wound pattern matched Skrellian plasma rifles. But the Skrellian uprising had been crushed 43 years ago, in the Tertius Belt. This human couldn't be older than 30 standard years, based on their biology. She scanned another scar, then another. Each time, the database returned impossible results. A Draxian blade wound from 60 years ago. Radiation scarring from the Procyon incident 71 years past. A peculiar mark on his forearm that matched Yithrin combat implants from a war that ended before Vel'kara had even hatched. "This is defective," she muttered, preparing to recalibrate her scanner. The human spoke for the first time, his voice rough from disuse. "It's not defective." Vel'kara's 4 eyes widened. "You were at Procyon?" "Among other places." He smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Nice work with the scanner. Most don't bother looking that close." "That's impossible. Humans live barely a century." "Most humans," he interrupted. "Not all." Vel'kara's mind raced. She called up her files on human biology, searching for mentions of life extension technology. There were rumors, unconfirmed reports, but nothing concrete, nothing that would explain this. She spent the next cycle scanning every centimeter of his body, documenting each scar, cross-referencing each one. A pattern emerged that turned her blood cold. 37 major conflicts across 82 years, battles that had shaped galactic history. And if the scars were accurate, this human had been present at every single one, not just present. The wound patterns suggested close combat, personal engagement. This wasn't someone who'd observed from orbit. Vel'kara pulled up historical records, searching for any mention of human involvement in those conflicts. Most found nothing. Humans hadn't even left their solar system during the earlier battles. But in a few cases, in the footnotes and unverified accounts, she found something that made her skin prickle. The Skrellian uprising. A single unidentified fighter had infiltrated the rebel command ship and eliminated their war council, ending the conflict in one night. Survivors reported a pale demon, with eyes like ice. The Draxian incursion. When the Draxian warlord Kreshtar had been assassinated in his own flagship, witnesses described a creature that moved like death itself. The Yithrin border wars. A mysterious combatant had disabled the Yithrin dreadnought's core, saving millions of civilian lives. Security footage showed only a blur and a figure disappearing into shadow. In each case, the descriptions were vague, the details incomplete. But Vel'kara looked at the human suspended before her and saw the truth written in scar tissue. "You," she whispered. "It was you. All of it." "Not just me," the human replied. "There are others." "How? How is this possible?" He was quiet for a long moment, and Vel'kara thought he might retreat back into silence. But then he sighed, a deeply human sound of weariness. "What do you know about Earth's history? You warred among yourselves for millennia, typical for developing species." "We did," he agreed, "and we learned something in all that blood and fire. We learned that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. We learned that peace requires vigilance. And we learned that there are always those who see kindness as weakness." He shifted in the containment field, and Vel'kara saw more scars ripple across his back, layer upon layer of old wounds. "When we reached the stars," he continued, "we made a choice. Some of us volunteered for a program. Life extension, enhanced healing, augmented reflexes. We would become Earth's memory, its insurance policy, the Eternal Guard." "Eternal?" Vel'kara echoed. "We can be killed," he said softly, "but we don't age, we don't forget, and we don't forgive species that threaten humanity." His eyes locked onto hers. "Every scar you scanned, I kept it. We all do. They're reminders of every battle, every species that thought humans would be easy prey, every threat we ended before it reached Earth." Vel'kara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. "How many of you are there?" "Enough." She checked her chronometer. The invasion fleet would be gathering at the staging point, preparing for the final jump to Earth's system. Thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of soldiers. The Corvathi had conquered 73 systems. They'd never lost a major engagement. "You need to tell your superiors to call off the invasion," the human said, as if reading her thoughts. "They won't listen to warnings from a prisoner. Then they'll learn the hard way." He traced a finger along a fresh scar on his chest, one Vel'kara had catalogued as being only weeks old. "This one's from the Kelthian expedition. 3 of their dreadnoughts tried to establish a forward base in Neptune's orbit. We sent them home in escape pods. Message received. The Kelthians said it was a navigation error. It was a test. We passed. Just like we've passed every test for the last 80 years. His voice hardened. "Earth doesn't start wars, interrogator. But the Guard makes damn sure we finish them," Vel'kara's communicator chirped. She answered it, her eyes never leaving the human. "Interrogator Vel'kara." Her commander's voice crackled through. "What has the prisoner revealed about Earth's defenses?" She looked at the map of scars, the living history of humanity's hidden strength. "Commander, I strongly recommend we abort the invasion. This species is not what our intelligence suggests." "Your recommendations are noted and dismissed," the commander cut her off. "The fleet launches in 6 cycles. Extract whatever tactical data you can. If the human won't talk, use enhanced methods." The connection severed. The human smiled that cold smile again. "They always ignore the warnings. I could tell them everything I've discovered," Vel'kara said desperately. "Show them the evidence." "You could," he agreed. "But commanders who've conquered 73 systems don't believe in ghosts and stories. They believe in firepower and numbers. They'll see Earth's small fleet and think they have an easy victory. And do they?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, and his words carried the weight of centuries. "When your fleet enters Earth's system, they won't face warships. They'll face us. The Guard doesn't fight with fleets. We fight with purpose. Every one of us has spent decades, some of us over a century, perfecting the art of war. We've studied every species, every tactic, every weapon. We've died and learned from it. We've failed and adapted. Your commanders see numbers and technology." Vel'kara thought of the historical accounts, single operatives dismantling entire military operations. "How many ships will your Guard destroy?" "All of them," he said simply. "Or we'll die trying. That's the oath." She wanted to argue, to point out the impossibility of what he claimed. But she'd seen the scars, she'd read the reports, and deep in her genetic memory, in the place where prey remembers predators, something screamed at her to listen. The next 6 cycles passed in a blur. Vel'kara compiled her findings into a comprehensive report, highlighting every inconsistency, every impossible scar, every historical correlation. She sent it up the chain of command with maximum priority flags. It was returned to her marked speculative and insufficient evidence. She tried to speak directly to the War Council, but her requests were denied. She was an interrogator, not a strategist. Her role was to extract information, not question military decisions. So she watched helplessly as the Corps of the Dominion's 9th Fleet assembled. 300 warships, including the flagship Destroyer of Worlds, a vessel so powerful it had reduced fortified planets to rubble, troop carriers by the dozen, fighter squadrons that blackened the stars, the largest invasion force the Dominion had assembled in a generation, and it was all aimed at one unremarkable blue planet. The human remained in his cell, silent again, now that he'd delivered his warning. Vel'kara visited him one last time before the fleet departed. "Why did you tell me?" she asked. "If your guard is so secret, why reveal yourselves?" He looked at her with those ancient eyes. "Because we're not monsters. We give every species a chance to turn back, to choose peace. Will you try to escape? To warn Earth? I don't need to. Earth already knows." He gestured to himself. "When a guard member is captured, we send a signal before they take us, a dead man's switch. By now, every member of the guard knows where I am, and they know why. They'll be waiting for your fleet." "How many?" Vel'kara demanded. "How many guard members will be there?" The smile was sad, this time. "Every single one who can reach this system in time. Maybe 200, maybe 500. Does it matter? Against 300 warships? Yes, it matters. You still don't understand," he said softly. "This isn't about numbers. It's about will. It's about people who've dedicated their entire extended lives to one purpose: making sure humanity survives. Your soldiers are conscripts and volunteers. They fight for the Dominion. We fight for home, for family, for the billions of humans who sleep safely because we stand guard. There's no force in this galaxy that can overcome that." The fleet departed on schedule. Vel'kara watched from the observation deck as the massive ships engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished toward Earth. She'd been ordered to remain behind with the prisoner, to continue interrogation. But she knew there was nothing left to learn. She spent the next weeks in her office, monitoring communications, waiting for news from the fleet. The transit time was 17 days at maximum jump speed. The Dominion's propagandists were already preparing victory announcements, planning parades, allocating Earth's resources. Vel'kara couldn't sleep. She kept seeing those scars, kept reading those historical accounts. Single operatives changing the course of wars. What if the human had been telling the truth? On the 18th day, the first transmission arrived. It was garbled. Panicked, under attack. Not military vessels. They're everywhere. Individual fighters. How are they doing this? Then static. Vel'kara's hands trembled as she opened the next transmission. It was from a frigate captain, his face streaked with blood. "They're not using formation tactics. They're targeting command decks, engine cores, weapons arrays. They know exactly where to hit. We can't." The transmission ended in an explosion. More reports flooded in. The fleet wasn't being destroyed by other ships. They were being dismantled by small craft, some no bigger than shuttles, each piloted by a single person. The guard had arrived. Vel'kara pulled up what tactical data was getting through. The Corvathi had numbers, but the guard had precision. They moved like they knew every ship's layout, every weakness, every blind spot. Because they did. They'd spent lifetimes studying Corvathi vessels, preparing for this exact scenario. A guard member would breach a cruiser, disable its weapons, and vanish before security could respond. Another would attach charges to a destroyer's reactor housing with surgical precision. They didn't stay to fight when outnumbered. They struck and disappeared, moving to the next target. And they were winning. The transmissions became more desperate. They're not human. They can't be human. Nothing moves like that. But they were human. Just humans who dedicated a century to becoming perfect warriors. The flagship destroyer of worlds sent its final message on day 19. The War Council was dead. The Guard had boarded the ship, fought through its security forces, and eliminated the command structure. The last image showed a figure in a simple pressure suit, covered in scars, standing over the fallen admiral. Then, silence. For 3 days, Vel'kara heard nothing. The Dominion's leadership was in chaos. How could their greatest fleet simply vanish? They demanded answers. They blamed equipment failure, blamed sabotage, blamed everything except the truth. On the 22nd day, a transmission arrived on Vel'kara's personal channel. It showed her prisoner no longer in his cell. He stood in what looked like a small spacecraft, Earth visible through the viewport behind him. "Interrogator Vel'kara," he said, his voice calm. "Your fleet has been disabled. We destroyed only the ships that refused to surrender. Approximately 40 vessels are limping back to Corvathi space with crews intact. The rest chose to fight to the end. We honored that choice." He leaned closer to the camera. "Earth has released all Corvathi prisoners, including your invasion force personnel. They're being sent home in their own ships. Tell your leaders that Earth seeks no territory, no revenge, no reparations. We only ask to be left in peace." Vel'kara found her voice. "How did you escape?" "I was released as a gesture of goodwill after the battle ended. But I wanted you to know something." He pulled back his sleeve, revealing his forearm. A fresh scar ran across it. "Still healing. This is from your containment field. I'll keep it. Just like all the others. A reminder of the Corvathi who tried to conquer Earth. A reminder that we were ready. The War Council will never accept this defeat," Vel'kara said. "They'll send more fleets." "We know," he replied. "And we'll be ready for those too. We're always ready. That's what it means to be Guard. We remember every threat, we learn from every encounter, and we never ever stop protecting our home." He paused. "But I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope your people choose wisdom over pride." The transmission ended. Vel'kara sat in silence for a long time. Then she began writing her report. Not for the War Council. They wouldn't listen. But for the historical archives. For future generations of Corvathi who might one day look back and ask how their mighty dominion learned humility. Barely. She titled it, "The Scars That Saved Earth, a Study of Humanity's Eternal Guard." In it she detailed everything. Every scar, every battle, every impossible feat. She described the human's words, his warnings, his cold certainty. And she ended with a recommendation that would likely end her career. Any species considering hostile action against Earth should understand this truth. Humanity's greatest strength is not their technology or their numbers. It is their memory. They do not forget those who threaten them. They do not forgive unprovoked aggression. And they have created immortal guardians who carry the scars of every mistake their enemies have made. The human I interrogated had accumulated 82 years of combat experience. Imagine facing hundreds of such beings, each one a living weapon forged in the fires of galactic conflict. I witnessed our greatest fleet destroyed by these warriors. I recommend, in the strongest possible terms, that the Corvathi Dominion seek peaceful relations with Earth and never, under any circumstances, threaten them again. The report was classified and buried, but Vel'kara made sure copies survived, hidden in places where curious minds might find them. Years later, when she was old and her carapace had grayed, she heard rumors. The Dominion had quietly established trade relations with Earth. No official apology, no acknowledgement of the failed invasion, just a mutual agreement to coexist. And sometimes, in the deepest parts of space where no government sensors could reach, Corvathi ships would encounter small human vessels. The pilots were always scarred, always watching, always vigilant. The Eternal Guard, standing their endless watch. Vel'kara never forgot the human who taught her the truth. Somewhere out there, he was still fighting, still protecting, still adding scars to his collection. a living reminder that humanity had learned from millennia of war and had chosen to never be unprepared again. She looked up at the stars and felt something she'd never expected to feel toward another species: respect, and perhaps a touch of gratitude, because in refusing to talk about Earth and letting the scars speak instead, that human had saved countless lives. Korvathi lives. Human lives. All the lives that would have been lost in a war that never needed to happen. The scars had told the truth, and the truth had set them all free.